Welcome back. In this section, we are going to continue learning about muscles in the upper extremity, but specifically now we are going to be going to the anterior forearm muscles. So before we start with that, I need to explain some terminology so that you can understand what is written as far as actions going. So here in the wrist area, we have those 8 carpal bones, and then the palm of the hand area are the 5 metacarpals. So the joints between the metacarpals and the carpals are called carpal metacarpal joints. We're not going to be talking about those today. Then between the metacarpals and the proximal phalanges, and they're easier to see on this side, your knuckles, those are called metacarpal phalangeal joints or MCP joints. In digits 2 through 4, because you have 3 bones, a proximal, middle, and a distal phalanx, you're going to have 2 joints. So you will have a proximal interphalangeal joint or a PIP joint, and you'll have a distal interphalangeal joint or DIP joint. In the thumb, however, you only have 2 bones, so there's only 1 joint. So it's not called a proximal or a distal interphalangeal joint. It's just called an interphalangeal joint or an IP joint. Please remember that this is not the IP joint. This is a metacarpal phalangeal joint or an MCP. So pause for a second here, look at the picture, explore your hand. We're going to have the exact same terminology when it comes to the feet. So make sure you understand these words. All right, now let's get started. In the anterior forearm, there are 3 layers of muscle, and you can kind of see that on your handout because I usually put muscles in a space and then muscle, then in space, and then 2 more muscles. So there's 4 muscles that are in the superficial layer, and they all share almost the exact same origin. So what I need you to do is find your humerus where your medial condyle is and go just above it, and you can feel your medial epicondyle. And then take this part of your other hand and place it right there so that your thumb is going just above your elbow posteriorly, and you're going to have 4 fingers coming anteriorly. Take your, and it doesn't matter if you do it with the right hand or the left hand, the exact same thing will happen. Have your pinky being aiming towards the base where your pinky finger is on the other hand. Have your forefinger being angling to the base of where the first metacarpal is. And then, have your middle finger being aimed there. Your 4th finger then being aimed in the middle between the 3rd and the 5th. And the 2nd finger, your index finger, just aim across at an angle. And so your fingers should be aiming something like this. So don't have them going straight down and don't have them going across. The second one goes across and the other ones are aiming right down here. So when you're done, your hand should look something like this picture. And what you have done, whether you do it on the right or the left, so make sure you do it on both because you don't know on a model or a picture if it's going to be a right forearm or a left forearm. These are the 4 superficial muscles. Okay, so these are the first 4 we're going to learn, and we're going to start with the one in the index finger, in other words, the one that is lateral, and then work our way medial. So the first muscle is called the pronator teres, and just by looking at the name, can you guess the action of this muscle? Look at that first word. Yeah. So this is going to do pronation, but don't forget you have to say what part of the body. So this is pronating the forearm, okay? So this is a round muscle, basically goes from the humerus, is going to insert on the radius, so when it contracts, it's going to start bringing the radius over the ulna so they can have that X shape for pronation. The next muscle that's just adjacent to it, so where we are going next is we're going to be going medial. So this will be our second muscle. And that is called the flexor carpi radialis. So let's look at this name. It's a flexor muscle. Carpi means for the wrists, and it's on the radial side, okay? So just in the name, you have one of the two actions. It's going to flex the wrist. Okay. The other action I'll get back to in a bit. Okay. So that's the flexor carpi radialis. Continually medial, our very next muscle is this long muscle going right down the middle of your wrist, aiming towards the middle of the palm. And so it's called the Palmaris longus. And when you look at this one, you can clearly see on all the models that you can see a longer tendon for this one than you can see for the others, because the tendons of the others are going deep to this structure we'll learn about, whereas this is the only one whose tendon goes above it. So if you tense your wrist, you can usually see this tendon right there in the center, and that is the tendon of the palmaris longus muscle. So go ahead and do that. Then you would know the flexor carpi radialis would be on the thumb side. And then the muscle on the other side, on the ulnar side, that fourth muscle we're going to talk about, which is going to be this one. Because remember, these all have a common origin. So we're not going to this little one down there. We're going to this one. That would be the flexor carpi ulnaris, which flexes the wrist on the other side. Okay. So on this one, I think you can kind of see how it's going to flex the wrist because it is on this, but you see how it's like almost at the corner? And so not only is it going to flex the wrist, it's also going to have the wrist go like this, okay? And so this is sometimes called ulnar flexion or an anatomical position. Basically, the hand is going back towards the midline, so it's also called wrist adduction, ADD, adduction. Okay. So flexor carpi ulnaris does the wrist adduction as well as flexion. Flexor carpi radialis does the wrist flexion, and we'll do radial flexion or wrist abduction. So that's it for the superficial layer. So look for a second at this model and find the palmaris longus muscle right here. Do you see how you can see deep muscle poking through on both sides? Okay. That's actually the same muscle that you can see on both sides of the palmaris longus, and that is the muscle that's in the intermediate layer, and there's only one muscle. So that one intermediate muscle is called the flexor digitorum superficialis. So the first part, you can tell this is going to flex the digits. Superficialis tells you that this is probably the superficial one that's going to flex the digits, and there's going to be a deeper one, and you would be correct. And as soon as I show you the deeper one, then I'm going to explain the difference in the flexion of the two because it's quite significant. But for right now, this middle picture is this superficial part of the forearm taking off. So you can see the pronator teres, the flexor carpi radialis, and the palmaris longus. And then on each side of the palmaris longus, you can see the flexor digitorum superficialis. So these two arrows are pointing to the same thing as these two arrows. If you were to take this middle piece and flip it over, you would be looking at the entire surface. That would be flexor digitorum superficialis. So the bottom picture is showing what the arm model or the upper extremity model looks like with that piece removed. And so you do have some of the origin of the flexor digitorum superficialis still left there. But the rest of the muscle comes off so that we can see the third layer, the deeper layer, which we will get to. So that's the flexor digitorum superficialis. Now we have a third layer, which contains two deep muscles. So that's what we're looking at here. And so on this picture, Hopefully you can see that this with the blue arrow is one muscle, and then just above it on the picture, this one that I'm pointing to now is the other muscle, and this other muscle is on the thumb side. I know that because I labeled the picture so you could tell that this is a pollic. So this is a left forearm that you are looking at. So in the deep layer, you're going to have two muscles, and here's the good news. The one that's on the thumb side is going to go to the thumb. The one that is not on the thumb side is going to go to digits 2 through 5. So this is that deeper muscle that flexes the digits, and so it's called the flexor digitorum profundus. And by flexing the digits, I mean digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. So here's the difference between the flexor digitorum profundus and the flexor digitorum superficialis. Has to do with the insertion. The insertion of when the flexor digitorum superficialis comes down to the hand, the tendon is going to split. If we look at the previous one, you can see it's splitting into 4 tendons, one going to each of digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. But where it inserts is onto the middle phalanx of digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. Compare that picture to the flexor digitorum profundus, where it inserts onto the distal phalanx of digits 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what that means is flexor digitorum profundus flexes here, flexes here, flexes here, and flexes here because it crosses this last joint. In contrast to that, the flexor digitorum superficialis inserts here. So when you make a fist, your digits would be not flexed at the DIP if you did not have a flexor digitorum profundus. But if your flexor digitorum profundus works, then you can make a tight fist with each of these articulations flexed. Okay. The last muscle, the one on the thumb side, goes to the thumb, and it is going to flex the thumb. So it's called the flexor policus longus. Remember, the pollex is the thumb, so policus, ICIS, is the adjective form of pollex with an EX at the end. So yes, there's going to be a shorter one, but we don't have to learn it because it's what we call an intrinsic muscle of the hand. Its origin is here. Its origin is not high in the forearm, so we are not learning about that. So that's it for the muscles. However, there are a couple structures we need to learn about. Oh no, I apologize. One more muscle. This muscle, the pronator quadratus, the name is telling you it's a pronator, which means it's going to pull the radius over the ulna. So if it's pulling the radius over the ulna, that means the radius has to be the insertion, which means the ulna is going to be the origin. And it is in a quadrilateral shape. So that's why it's called the pronator quadratus. Now this muscle you can't see on the model. So this, you just have to look at pictures with cadavers or with drawings. But this is a strong pronator muscle. As you can see, it's much larger than that pronator teres muscle. So as far as structures that are not muscles, here in the wrist area, we have this band, which on the model looks like this white stripe, and it's highlighted in the cadaver picture. And this band is of dense connective tissue, dense regular connective tissue. So everything is aligning in this direction. And all these flexor tendons that we talked about are deep to this band except for one. Do you see how there is one that is superficial to it? So the one tendon that is superficial to the flexor retinaculum is the tendon of the palmaris longus. So you always can use that to confirm that, yes, that is the palmaris longus. So palmaris longus, that's why you can easily see this tendon on everybody. A lot of people, you can see the other tendons of the flexor, carpi, ulnaris, and radialis, but on everybody, that palmaris longus tendon is superficial and easy to see. So all those other tendons are deep to the flexor retinaculum in this little space that contains not only these tendons, but also has, on the backside, has your carpal bones, okay? So this space underneath that, so I have this little dotted arrow pointing to deep to the flexor retinaculum. This space is what's known as the carpal tunnel. So if you look at the bottom right, what you can see is we have the carpal bones, and then we have all the tendons of these flexor muscles, as well as we have a nerve, the median nerve located in there. So this is really not a space, it's more of a potential space. And what happens when you do a lot of shifting right or shifting left, or picking Pokemon, or doing your Zoom, or typing on the computer, all these electronic devices our wrists don't like. And what happens is the tendons in here get inflamed, and they start pushing on these softer substances, okay? So they can't push anything posteriorly because the bones are there, and they can't push anteriorly because this is dense, tough connective tissue. So the softest structure is the one that gets pushed on, and that actually is the nerve. So when we have that nerve being impinged on, that's what carpal tunnel syndrome is. Where the first thing will be a sensory deficit in the carpal tunnel distribution, and then after that would be a deficit of the muscles that are innervated by the median nerve. All right, couple of more structures, continuing distally. So here is our palmaris longus tendon going superficial to the flexor retinaculum, and what you notice is we have this huge triangular structure which looks just like the flexor retinaculum because it's dense fibrous connective tissue. And this covers the entire palm area. It's like a broad sheet-like tendon. So it's an epineurosis. And so this is called the palmar epineurosis. And there are muscles that insert into this palmar epineurosis. And yes, that palmaris longus is one of them. And then for the last structure, we need to be looking at the digits. It's called a flexor tendon sheath, also known as a digital tendon sheath. So here's the problem. We have 3 bones here as well as a bone here, and the flexor tendons go across them, and every time you're flexing and extending, those flexor tendons are sliding back and forth, which means they can be starting to get shredded over the edges of the bone. So to prevent that, we encase them in a tendon sheath. And so hopefully you remember from lecture that a tendon sheath is kind of like a bursa, but in a hot dog shape. So the tendon lies in the middle of it like a hot dog lies in a hot dog bun. Okay. And so on models, they are these white structures. This has the split opening because we need to have the superficial digital muscle insert here, and then the deep one goes distally. So basically on the real cadaver pictures, I think they're a lot easier to see, and they're all highlighted here in green in this picture. So all these blue tubes, these are the flexor tendon sheaths when they're not opened, okay? And with that, we are done with all the muscles and structures in the anterior forearm. So I want to thank you. And make sure you've got those down pat before you move on to the muscles in the posterior forearm.